My children and I are in a women's shelter because of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I'm also physically disabled because of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I know you may feel like, how is that even possible? So sit tight for a quick story time. Many members of the church think the organization is so wonderful and don't understand why those who leave the church are so upset, but I can tell you exactly why. To start, as a child, I was sexually abused, and in the church, I was taught that that made me as bad as a murderer. I grew up believing I was as bad as a murderer. As a teenager, having been raped, going to my bishop to confess for this sin that was actually a massive trauma, and being labeled as bad as a murderer wounded me for a lifetime. As the miracle of forgiveness written by a prophet says, it's better for a woman to lose her life than her virtue. The self-hatred that I experienced because of this teaching and belief that was planted into my mind like poison changed the way I saw myself so much that I hated every aspect of who I am. I hated how I spoke, how I moved in the world, the body I lived in, and the soul that was tainted because of this. So I didn't want to be alive. I ended up dropping out of school. I ended up dropping out of life. And I'm lucky I'm still here, honestly. For years, I tried to prove my worth. I deleted everything I am, so much so that I became so misaligned with my true nature that my body manifested illness because of the self-hatred and because of the misalignment. All I wanted to do was to be worthy and be in alignment with the church and what the church deemed as worthy. I just wanted that label so bad, and it is a church of labels and superficial things. And I didn't understand that at the time, so I went on a mission. I got rid of all of me and replaced it with the church books, the church music. I did not even know who the hell I was. All I knew was what it says in the Book of Mormon and what the prophet said is good and not good, and I wanted to be only on the good side of that. After my mission, I met a man who had a similar journey and experience in the church, and I wanted more than anything to help heal his heart because I knew how deeply wounded it was by the church. In his family, I was looked at as his savior because I helped bring him back to church, and that was my purpose in the family. That was my purpose in his life as well, and I was held to that very strongly. To his mother's greatest joy, we were married in the temple, and that was a great achievement for him. And he was only active in the church with me for 1 year, and then he decided it was too much and stopped going. So I took the children by myself for years, and I was a primary president multiple times. I was in the Relief Society presidency. I gave my all to the church. I remember one day going to church with my mother-in-law at the time and my 3 children, and on the way, I was expressing to her how difficult it was to take my children to church when I was suffering so profoundly with rheumatoid arthritis. I could barely move. I could barely dress myself. And she said, Ashley, you have to do this because it's your responsibility to help this family stay together, because if Satan cannot get to the mother, he can't take over the family. So in her mind and understanding, it was critical for her son's salvation even that I remained a member of the church. So when I left the church, there was hell to pay. And the reason I left the church is very different than a lot of reasons other people do. I was so scared to study church history. I was so scared to study the truth of the situation because I was so indoctrinated. So what I ended up doing was actually studying my family history in an effort to strengthen my faith because I was losing faith. And also I was trying so desperately to heal my body, and I was studying the energy underneath my disease and discovered that the source of my self-hatred began when I was taught that I was as bad as a murderer. But the interesting thing was that as I studied my family history, I discovered an ancestor that kept a journal from the years 1855 to 1906. And he had the same patterns of people pleasing, the same patterns of dissolving into his environment and being abused by his authorities, and really deleting himself to please the church. And guess what? He also had rheumatoid arthritis. As I read his journals, I discovered that I was just a repeat of a generational trauma and wound, and I decided to take my power back and to heal myself from the inside out, and to no longer spend time in an organization that abuses people, that tells people who is worthy, who isn't, and pretends to play God while abusing and stealing money from their people and telling them lies, because nobody, especially children, should be taught lies about their worth. You also may be wondering why me and my children being in a homeless shelter has anything to do with the LDS Church. And the reason that has everything to do with the LDS Church is when I left the church and my ex-husband had a bipolar episode. He abandoned our family here in Texas and he moved back home to live with his family in Utah. And when he did that, they encouraged him to do horrible things to me and my children. In his manic phase, I'm usually a bad mom. Due to his paranoia, he thinks these things and he acts on them. And he made false claims to CPS and the cops, supported by his mother to do those things, because I am not a worthy, good person. I'm like possessed by a demon because I speak out about the evil of the church and the lies of the church, and because I reclaimed my power, that makes me in her eyes bad, and I'm no longer in this savior complex type of situation, saving her son from himself. She and my sister-in-law and all of his family encouraged him to leave me and the children. And he, in his bipolar state, he ended up cheating on me. He got a whole new life and job. And I begged the family forever to please get my husband help before we broke. And they ignored every single text message I sent because I'm an ex-Mormon. They ignored every plea for help that I sent because I'm an ex-Mormon, because I am possessed by a demon now, because the church said don't listen to people who have left the church because they're bad, and they believed them.